You probably didn't realize that this is basically a James Bond movie, but I guess that makes Professor X Magneto's sexy Bond girl. It's day 121 of 365. Today's movie, X-Men First Class. Professor X has his school for gifted youngsters. I have a movie club for film lovers. Ticket Stub Movie Club does daily film suggestions, monthly deep dives, and more. Discover more at patreon.com/ticketstubmovieclub. Directed by Matthew Vaughn and starring Michael Fassbender, James McAvoy, and Jennifer Lawrence, this is the first reboot that's not really a reboot on the X-Men timeline. We finally have a good X-Men movie to talk about. The last one we talked about was X-Men Origins Wolverine, which was not great. This one was also planned to continue that X-Men Origins title scheme, but then was kind of scrapped because it was initially supposed to be a Magneto-only movie and then kind of became a full reset for the X-Men. This also decides to continue the continuity of the original films, which kind of converges in Days of Future Past down the line. And I think all of these choices were made just in case they wanted to do more with the series, and boy, did they do more. Seeing this one in 2011 was an exciting experience. I had grown up on the X-Men movies. The first three were DVDs in my home, so I was very excited just to have more X-Men. And the Hugh Jackman cameo in this firmly set it in the same universe, so it really made it feel official watching it in the theaters. Revisiting in 2025, I had totally forgotten that this is just a James Bond movie because it's set in the 70s. They wanted to keep that kind of feel and flair, and what a great idea. Honestly, that pitch alone just is so much fun that I think it puts it up there with the best of the X-Men movies along with Days of Future Past and X2. That's not an official listing. Those are just my three top favorites. So without further ado, let's get into the three things that I loved about X-Men First Class. The first thing that I really love about this movie are the leftover notes from that X-Men Origins Magneto script. The initial pitch had been, let's do for Magneto what we did for Wolverine, give him a concentrated movie that can focus in on his past. And they mostly stayed true to that. Honestly, I feel that Magneto is the main character of this movie. But because of who they cast, they got Michael Fassbender, and he had just come off of a huge Academy Award success with Inglourious Basterds. So of course, they needed to show Magneto doing Inglourious Basterds shit. This ends up giving us one of the best sequences in the movie. Not only do we get the classical opening where we see him in Auschwitz going through the worst pain of his life, but we get revenge for that. That's really where this movie keys in on some of the deeper themes of Magneto and Professor X and like what they believe about the world. By the finale of the movie, he's not a villain straight up. Like, everything he's done so far is extremely understandable, and I like that the movie takes that stance. It chooses to say, no, Magneto is a very understandable villain. That's one of the things that fans love about him the most. And so not only are we going to give an origin for his telepathy-blocking helmet, but we're going to make him look like a badass. He's James Bond with magnetic powers that functionally look like telekinesis to anyone looking in. It's the scene in South America where he gets to extract information that really, really works the best for me here. I'm absolutely floored that they got away with this scene in a mainline X-Men movie. It's always fuck Nazis when you're reading my book, but I just love that we get a scene that is explicitly that from Magneto's perspective. These are people that I don't have to feel bad about. He's not hurting mutants or good people. He's hurting people who are willing to stand behind something like, I was just following orders. Not only do they give him cool kills and such an exciting moment, throwing the dagger and pulling it back out of somebody, oh my God, that stuff works so well, but he gets the absolutely bone-chillingest lines in the movie, saying things like his parents were hurt by pig farmers and tailors. Holy shit, it is just so cold. That scene in and of itself is enough to sell the whole movie for me. The second thing that I really dig about this movie is the choice to set it in the 70s. Now, the chronology of this series is not good. I could admit that with a stone cold straight face. I understand that it's a little confusing. However, the tone of each individual movie is the more important thing. When you're making a movie, you don't know if you're going to get the next one. The first three had been very 2000s feeling. Arguably, the first X-Men feels like the end of the 90s because of that crossover time, but X2, X3, and X-Men Origins all feel like early 2000s movies. And so to make the choice to do something different stylistically is really the first time for the X-Men to pop on the big screen. And this worked to great effect. Many people liked First Class more than the last movies because it allowed us to take them a little more seriously while still like showcasing the superpowers. From this point, many superhero things had taken off. The show Heroes was basically live-action X-Men on TV, so the public was becoming more aware of this genre and taking it more seriously as adult entertainment. I love the choice to do this 70s thing because it allows us to do this James Bond feeling and have it be authentic. That's so much fun. The X-Men are very liquid that way. They can kind of be put into different genres because they're just a team of people with superpowers, and we're used to seeing teams of people try to save the world. This is a concept that most viewers can latch on to. Doing the whole 70s thing is something that we don't see often, if at all, in this genre. I love the way that it allows this movie to stand out. The one that comes next to it is much more 80s themed. If we would have continued along this way, it would have ended up very 90s feeling by the time we get into Apocalypse, but we're starting to kind of lose the thread at that point. So X-Men First Class gets to stand out as the shift from the old ones into the shift into the new ones, and it kind of sits at the peak for the same reason that I listed about Fast 5 being the peak of the Fast and Furious franchise. You hit the middle ground where it starts to understand what it is and know where it wants to go, and that ends up being the best feeling overall. The third thing that I like about this movie is that Bond-flavored tone. Because we're set in the 70s, we get to do James Bond-feeling stuff, and making that Michael Fassbender is perfect. I mean, honestly, he could play James Bond, no problem. James McAvoy could also play James Bond, so kind of doubling down was a great idea. But like I said at the top, honestly, I feel like this makes James McAvoy's Professor X the Bond girl of the movie. They both kind of get their own Bond girl in one way or another, but I think in the case of Mystique, it's just to set up why she and Magneto are friends in the first X-Men movie, which does retroactively add a lot, I feel. And then Professor X and Moira are obviously like lovers in the comics, so they want to be true to the fans, but those relationships aren't deeply developed, like, at all. If anything, they're much more platonic and play that way, to me anyways, as we see the deepening friendship between Magneto and Professor X. Now, maybe this is a sacrilegious read, but I do think the two of them love each other deeply, especially with the pain that they both carry from their pasts. Professor X's idealism makes a lot of sense for a Bond girl too. The cynical nature that Magneto brings to his worldview, they really work in tandem with each other. They're just a really well-crafted, developed relationship. Now, this isn't something that we're new to, right? We've seen this build up over the last 3 X-Men movies that had the two of them in it. So to see this as like the prequel setup and payoff to those two titanic actors, both knighted, by the way, I think McAvoy and Fassbender had a lot to bite off here, and that's why they went for these big, talented actors to play these roles. And they continue them throughout the series, I think bringing almost as much to it as Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen. But what do you think? How do you feel about First Class? Does this end up being your favorite of the reboot series? We're going to continue talking about superhero movies. Unfortunately, the next one is not nearly as good as this one. We're talking about Green Lantern, and I'll see you tomorrow, unfortunately.